Everyone, welcome to today's virtual session hosted by Blue Onion and Cedar Rock Advisory. Happy to have you here. We know what a crazy busy time this time of year is for folks that we support, our customers and folks in the industry. So appreciate everyone taking some time out of their day to talk through a very important and timely topic, which is the year-end close. So here at Blue Onion, we talk a lot about the month-end close and how we can help support e-commerce accounting teams with their month-end close. But now we're coming into the season of wrapping up the books for the year. And with that can come a lot of work and a lot of frustration and manual efforts and chasing things down. And we're here to help with that. But we also want to just talk through what that process looks like and, how we help customers through it, but also sharing some of the missteps we've seen from companies we've worked with, or maybe from the folks on this panel's past experience, that can help kind of advise and guide the folks on the call today going into January and your own year-end close process. So thank you for being here. A couple quick things before we dive in, and I'll ask everyone to give a quick intro of who you are. My name's Courtney. I'm on the marketing team here at Blue Onion, and during today's event, you can shoot a question into the Q&A or chat feature. I'll be monitoring that throughout the session, so any questions that you have and that come up, feel free to put them there. Otherwise, we're going to go through some slides, but today will be primarily a conversation between Lindsay, Brian, and Evan on their experiences working as part of accounting teams and on the teams they're at today at Blue Onion and Cedar Rock. On the year-end close. So it doesn't have to be, I think the TLDR for today's session from my perspective is it doesn't have to be the most overwhelming time of the year for accounting teams. And we feel and understand your pain, but it can be simplified. And hopefully today you'll walk away feeling like you have some tips that will help you do that, or maybe some big solutions that can really radicalize your year-end this year. So with that, we'll dive in. I will pull up the slides, and in the meantime, Evan, why don't you kick us off with a little bit of background on who you are and Cedar Rock?
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Courtney. Lindsay, Brian, it's great to be with you on this. It's always good when people take proactive approaches, especially at year end, and it really, you know, separates the men from the boys, so to speak. So my name is Evan Scharf, Cedar Rock Advisory, founder and CEO. We've been doing this for 16 years. We're basically a client accounting services operation where we support many e-commerce clients as well as a few other industries, and we've become their accounting department, whether it's fractional CFO, controller work, bookkeeping, etc. So we're intimately involved in this year-end process, and it's a real pleasure and refreshing to be able to work with great people like Blue Onion who make it a lot easier for us and for our clients.
Brian, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hey, yeah, Evan, very excited to be here and talk about this with you. Agree on the proactive approach. My name is Brian Webb. I am our Vice President of Product here, and I've gone through about 15 different titles, Lindsay, since I joined, maybe.
Yeah.
It started with all things accounting and then migrated into more specific things, but really just joined as an accountant that's very passionate about solving problems for accountants. And so been a controller at many places before, brought the kind of in the seat perspective of a CPA to in-house at Blue Onion, and excited to talk about what everybody wants to talk about at the end of the year, which is the year-end review and getting ready for an audit.
Hey everyone, my name is Lindsay Bunting. I am one of the co-founders and CEO of Blue Onion, but really my love and passion is on the finance and accounting side. And so that's really how we started Blue Onion. My background, I was head of finance at a company called Birchbox over a decade ago, CFO at a company called Resonance, but then also helped build out finance and accounting functions for CPG brands. So brands that we love working with like Studs, Buffy, a few others in there. And so just got to see lots of different processes, systems, pain points. And that's really how we built Blue Onion, was really out of some of the challenges, especially around audit, around diligence processes, and building tools data tools, I'll say specifically for finance and accounting teams. So excited to be here today with Evan and Brian and Courtney, and just really want this to be the most helpful conversation, really around the year-end process. And so we'll talk maybe just quickly about the agenda. But I think this will be a lot more fluid than that. So really just some of the year-end challenges, and so excited to have Evan here too, because to his point, he's not just seeing this for one customer, right? Gets to sort of see some of the trends and where people get tripped up over lots of different clients. So I think that's always, super helpful to hear about. But we'll also talk a little bit more about some changes in processes, some of the things that, we've all seen work or maybe not work well. And then just some checklist things, right? Of just like how you should be thinking about some of the timeline, and hopefully walk away with some really helpful tips and tricks. So I think, Courtney, we can jump right in. All right, so obviously with year end, there's a lot more scrutiny around the books. But Evan, really would love to hear, how you approach this, how Cedar Rock approaches this, right? How is year end, different from a month end for you guys? How do you approach that, with your clients?
Okay, great. We got this a lot. And the truth is, and the real answer is, we don't really want it to be that different.
Yeah.
Okay. And the way that we do that is really maintaining things and scrutinizing things. I think that's a great word, scrutiny that you have on the slide. Scrutinizing things on a consistent basis. There are certain things that you're only going to want to look at monthly. There are certain things that you want to look at on a quarterly basis. But we really hope and try that the year end is not crazy. And the truth of the matter is, for us, it's really not. Okay. And we do that. I'll just give you an example. Like, I would say 70% of our business comes from accounting firms like Witham. Okay, as an example, plug to Witham. I know Blue Onion does a lot of work with Witham, as well as others. So let's say we know that a client is going to be subject to an audit, and we're in the middle of July. We're asking them for their audit request list when we onboard our client at the beginning of the process. So it's not like we're being reactive. And I think that the key word that everybody has to remember in like for the session today, and as you go through the year end, and maybe how you plan for the coming year, is the word like proactive. You always have to be proactive. Don't wait for like someone to ask you the question. Preempt that and provide the answer before. And here at Cedar Rock, one of the things we do is we're that financial storyteller for you. And we try to, build chapter after chapter. I don't want to get too granular in the analogy, but it's really about building a good base so that at the end of those 12 months, and even looking forward, you actually have a good story to tell, with accuracies and checks and balances throughout the year.
Yeah, and I think, Brian, you're nodding your head too, because,
Yeah.
a lot of maybe you can talk a little bit about the work that we do with some of our customers too, of just, I think to Evan's point, this, not writing maybe the whole novel at year end, but
Yeah.
really, right, like building the good foundation, throughout the year.
Yeah, you can certainly tell the people who have like good controls and good systems in place, right? Is like the person that's cramming for the essay at the very last hour, right? Is the person that's worried about what they did for the whole rest of the year, right? And so if you have good systems in place, you have good processes in place, just like Evan said, the end of the year should be just like any other day. You're just crossing some T's, dotting some I's, making sure that when you have that additional scrutiny, that what you've done throughout the year really holds up to that. But hopefully it really is, just like month end is just another day, year end should just be another day for
But
all.
if it's not, if I could just add something,
Yeah.
it's very important, right? Because someone may be looking at this and be like, wait a second, I'm messed over. I didn't do it
Yeah.
this year. 2025 is done. Internally over here, and what we try and explain to our clients is every opportunity that presents itself, whether it's going to be things are working out great or maybe not so great, is really an opportunity to learn and to
Yeah.
grow from, right? So even if you're in a situation right now where it's not ideal, and yes, obviously there's going to be a rush. Obviously, there has to be completeness. Reconciliations need to be done, categorization, looking at those KPIs, whatever they are. It actually, at this point of the year, I think is super empowering
Yeah.
because Now you'll look and be like, wait a second, I wish I knew A. I wish I knew B. I wish
Hmm.
I knew what my gross profit margin was here. I wish I knew how my percentage of returns. And Blue Onion is like a big part of that piece of the puzzle, but it's one piece. And there's like a
Right.
holistic financial approach when you look at the balance sheet, which people don't pay too much attention to, unfortunately, if they're not well versed in how to look at, financial statements. But I would encourage people to use this as an opportunity about what your wish list is so that you can prepare for 2026.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, Evan, that's such a good point too. Yes, if everyone had maybe been writing the chapters as they've been going, right, this webinar would be very short.
I think we should do this webinar quarterly so that
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So Courtney, maybe if we go to the
Yeah.
next slide, and maybe Evan, maybe to ask it a little bit differently too. So, you know, maybe it's not year end, but maybe it's like a new client that comes to you. Like it's this concept, maybe a little bit more of, cleanup. And yes, I think a lot of people will probably be using year end as the time to do that. For you guys, I know it's more during the onboarding process. Like, how do you think about, and like, how do you guys approach? Maybe it's like onboarding a new client and maybe answering that in a way that helps people that maybe they're not necessarily working with a new accounting partner, but they're like, oh my gosh, I do have a lot of these things and I need to clean up.
Okay, so the general approach that we take is we don't walk into an engagement and make assumptions that we know their business better than they do. Okay. Yes, there's certain industries, there are obviously certain similarities within industries about, the chart of accounts or what things look like, but we want to be good listeners in the beginning. So we'll always ask the following question. What do you think you need us to do? Right? Not what do you need us to do, but what do you think you need us to do? Inevitably, what happens is they'll say we need A, B, and C. And then I'll ask, what about D and E? They're like, oh, we don't need that. That's okay. And then they'll say, oh, by the way, can you do X, Y, and Z or whatever it is? And it becomes conversational. And what that does, that's a springboard for us to get into an educational conversation with them, right? It's not just about, like I said, we're not just reactive. We want to be proactive. But first, we want to hear, what do you think your challenges are? Maybe there are challenges that you're not even aware of that we're familiar with because we've been down this road before, right? How do we preempt them? And going through that process and explaining to them, hey, how much money you made this year, how much money, I'm going to make it very elementary just to bring out the point. How much money you have in your bank account doesn't really tell you how good of a business you have, right? Um, Educating people about what a balance sheet looks like, how important cash flow projections are. I mean, when we're dealing with, e-commerce situations, obviously making sure you're up and up on sales tax, nexus studies, like what's coming down the pipeline. If you have to, if let's say it's the winter now and you have to start buying for, let's say, your fall selection, what does cash flow look like, right? What percentage of returns did you have? You can't look forward without knowing that history. And that goes into the cleanup, right? So when we onboard a new client, we want to understand, A, what do you have right now? What do you think that wish list is? We may throw in a couple of things that you may not have thought about. We may kick it down the road. But sort of setting you up to success and educating you about why the things that we see consistently throughout the industry are relevant to you. And some may not be relevant, but everything is really customized to you. And it's a conversation that takes a couple of months, and is always evolving as the client continues to grow.
Yeah. And Evan, maybe I'll ask this question to you first, and then Brian, I'll ask this one to you after. Is, Evan, so you get to work with so many different clients, right, at Cedar Rock. So are there certain areas, knowing that every client's a little bit different, where you see people really get tripped up and or maybe like need more education or more information about like certain pieces? I know you mentioned the balance sheet. I don't know if there's anything there that like comes to mind where you're like, usually this is a place where, people have questions or maybe they don't even know what they don't know as you guys are onboarding a new client.
So one thing that comes up a lot is, what is my real cost of goods sold?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is my real gross profit margin? How does freight in play a role? How does, freight out? Whatever customs, if you're coming from overseas, hitting costs as it relates to Amazon, right? It's
Yeah.
very simple when you do back of the napkin type of arithmetic, and you're like, well, okay, whatever your costs are, and then you'll throw in a couple of things, but so often we see people that are not familiar enough, especially like Amazon fees, like that's a huge one. that people think they're making money and they're really not. And I tell people all the time, cash flow is important. You can have a really great business, and cash is just this annoying thing that you need. And I try to tell people you really do have a good business. Like, just imagine if someone gave you $5 million. Everything would be great. You're not going to be a money manager. And what we want to do is we want to take that, because at a certain point, people think they're just like, they have a line of credit, or they have a bank loan, or they have an investor, and they're just moving money from one to the other just to stay afloat. And they're not really focused on what they started the business out to do in the beginning. And that was to produce a product, to be entrepreneurial, to be creative, to bring something to market that they think will benefit from. And all too often, we have to redirect them and remind them what they're really there for and how we could alleviate the pressure from them by getting ahead of things.
And yeah, Brian, same question for you of, are there certain areas where you see people get tripped up?
Yeah, I certainly echo Evan's comment on Amazon fees. We see that all the time. We have a page in our application that shows them their settlements and goes kind of from their gross, what did I expect for all of the sales activity, to net after all of the fees. And there's a lot of shock that can happen on that page for the first time when they see that. And so certainly we'll echo that one. But I do think this page hits at a lot of them. Evan mentioned it before, but we see a lot of our customers go from, maybe I'm a CEO and I'm kind of trying to manage the books myself, into hiring an outside firm or bringing it in-house for the first time, and just going through a lot of the evolution of their business and different people being a part of their financial puzzle or picture. And those people are growing in their knowledge of accounting and what that looks like. And the balance sheet is usually like one of the last things on the list for people. Is you want to make sure you got your monthly revenue right and you feel good about that. But that has a lot of other impacts, like your accruals, so sales tax, like collection and remittance and things like that we see a lot of struggles around. Deferred revenue is one for some of our customers who may have longer fulfillment times or lead times on some of their products. Um, and then inventory checks. I grew up in a house of accountants, and I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and my dad would leave every December to go count cattle at the end of the year because that was the inventory for the feedlots. And so all of us have those things, right? Is now it's a bunch of warehouses and just making sure that we can account for the things that are on our books. And when we do have this end of year scrutiny.
I did not know that. I
Yeah.
have done warehouse counts, but certainly not cattle counts.
Yeah. My
So
brother still does it.
that's
Still going
amazing.
and counting heads of cattle at the end of the year.
That
I
is
learned something
amazing.
new today.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Okay. So for, we talk about January, but maybe let's not even talk about January. Let's maybe talk about just audit in general. And Evan, just curious from your perspective too, because we hear, some people are going through audit, getting through their audit by February. Some people take through July and August. Obviously depending on complexity, size, preparedness for year end. From your perspective, right? Like, if maybe a couple questions. So one, like, what do you guys think is, reasonable if you're just a benchmark, right? And say like, hey, most companies get through audit by this time. Like, what is like a good, benchmark that you think about?
You mean the time of,
The
like, what
time.
month of it?
Yeah.
There's so many variables associated with that. It has to do with the accounting firm that you're working with.
Yeah.
Like, how important are you for them? I don't want to say they're more important, actually. No, because if it's a small one and they can get you out of the
Right.
way, like, that's great, right?
Totally.
And a lot of it has to do with, like, staffing. A lot of
Right.
it has to do with, again, if you want to get this done because you're going to be raising some money or some bank needs something. Many accountants that we speak to, um, and the relationships we have with many of the partners in these firms, they tell us they love when people are proactive and say, here's my stuff. I really want to get in the queue early, right? What can you do to accommodate me? Because on the other end, and we're like in the middle, they're
Mhm.
frustrated because they're always waiting for their clients to get their stuff together. So, like, make it easy for them.
Yeah.
And if you make it easy for them, they'll very quickly love to get you out of the way, send you a nice big bill, you pay it, and be a great client for them, and then let the slackers, be dealt with a little bit later. That's my recommendation. You can't say, well, there's just so many variables involved, but if you want to get higher in that queue, be proactive with them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think like regulatory factors come in, like who are your governing bodies and what deadlines do you maybe have to meet there that I've faced in previous stops at my place. But I 100% agree with Evan is um I feel like there's an adage around being sort of combative with your auditors and kind of making their life a little bit hard and putting them in some sort of dark room in the closet or something like that. And I've always seen the opposite approach actually be way more productive of just actually being collaborative, getting them their information ahead of or on time, making sure that things are running on a good schedule. I think that like that's where you're going to hit an intense 3 week window. I think that that's actually a beautiful audit, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of them go for months and get delayed and have issues, you know. And so being, I see the word collaborative on there, collaboration. I think that that's the key to a really smooth audit, and how I've always approached it.
I've been on the other end of it. I started my career as an auditor at Deloitte. Okay. So, I mean, yeah, it was an interesting ride. And then the company, my main client went public when I was there. So even after busy
Oh,
season, it was like still busy.
yeah.
But whatever.
Yep.
And actually, so Evan, so a lot of our clients are maybe going through, starting to go through maybe some of their first audits. We obviously also work with some publicly traded companies, but what advice would you have for somebody who's, going through their first audit?
You have to have an audit prep meeting with the partner and the team that's working on your account, on your audit. Okay. It's not just at the partner level. You want to get to know that manager level also. You want to know who that is because that's really the person that's going to be really working more closely and intimately with you and your team. Again, like Brian said, if it's the first time you're doing it, it's okay to say, I've never done this before.
Mm,
They will It's an opportunity for them to mold you how it should be done or how they would like you to behave because you're not coming in with any baggage about bad audit experience,
Yeah.
right? But so use that to your advantage, right? And use it as an educational learning experience. And again, they're super professionals and all the firms that we work with and that you have relationships with. And if they, it's important just to remind people, and I think they know this intuitively, that everybody is focused on the same goal. And that goal is to get nice, clean, audited financial statements that can tell you that story, can move you to the next level where you want to go. And if you're working with good professional people that are like-minded, even if it is the first time, use that to your advantage. But it's very important to be communicative, constantly transparent with them. And you do need to nudge them along a little bit in the process. And you will get frustrated if it's the first time that you've done it because you may not hear from somebody for a week on the other end. And then they'll say, oh, I need this by tomorrow. But you have to just be prepared that those things are going to happen. Um, but when you come out of it, you'll be more seasoned. But hopefully it'll be a positive
yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
It's never fun. I don't know.
Yeah, it's certainly never fun, but I do think that that's where the collaboration becomes bi-directional, is where they can like help you format. Like there's new guidance coming out and you need new disclosures, helping you understand what those look like. How do you actually get ready for that? I also think really impactful is making sure that you do interim work that very first year. So like you can do a September set of testing with those auditors and go through a little bit of that before you get to that January rush. And maybe they flag some things. Their intent is not to get like to have a gotcha. Their intent is to make sure that you have accurately presented financials. So if they discover something in September, you have time to recover from that. You can fix that in your financials. You can have that ready to go for December so it's not a surprise and you're scrambling at that point. And that's really where that collaborative nature of a relationship can be really beneficial to you.
That's true. Pro forma is huge.
Yeah, and I mean, just I know this actually we didn't even discuss this in the question list, but like because you do work with such a wide range of auditors, how should be like are there certain criteria, right, to say, hey, we think this auditor would be a good fit with this company? Like, how do you like do you have any advice for people who are just like, hey, I need to find an auditor, I have 5 different recommendations, how do you figure out who the team is that could maybe be the best fit for you?
So I can make something up and say, oh, go with firm A or firm B, but then that
Yeah.
really won't good for the other firms. So I'm not going to do that. No, we work with many top top 40 firms in the country and smaller firms as well. I happen to know many, many partners and different levels at these firms, and I will tell you that they are all real professionals. They wouldn't be where they are or working for these world-class firms if they didn't do a good job. Um, Obviously, you have to be comfortable with the individual people that you're working with. You have to make sure that they're competent in that industry, that they've done this before. Um, you don't want to Google somebody, who should I use for my audit? You're obviously part of some community or some industry group, or you're working with someone, whether it's Blue Onion ourselves or whoever it is that you are working with, to give you that insight. And, when people come to us and say, who should we use, in audit, I know the personality of the people that are there. I know the individual partners of some of these firms. I will recommend multiple firms or multiple partners within the firms that I think are appropriate. I mean, in terms of the audit, in some way is a commodity, and it's more and more of a commodity as time goes on. Um, and people shouldn't just look at it as checking the box. I think the way, Brian, you presented it, it's a very smart way to look at it, is like they really want to make sure that your stuff is accurate for your own purposes as well. Look at it as like a learning experience. Um, but I will say it's really a personality match. It's not so much, going through the audit, because they all pretty much have the same requirements and checklists that everybody needs to go through. But ask people around that what their experiences are with whoever, and that should lead you in that direction. I'm not going to say you can go wrong. I mean, obviously, some people have bad experiences, but you're not going to be able to find that out before.
For sure. I'll keep mine short. I think relationship and industry are probably the two factors that, like, there's a lot of what Evan just said. It's just like someone that you gel with, that maybe you've worked with before, or is a referral from someone you trust, and then make sure that they know the industry you're in and that they can do that. That's really going to help make that work out well for you.
And maybe Brian, because we have a number of clients, Blue Onion clients that are on the webinar, do you have any advice for them as they're going through the audit, and also, how to leverage Blue Onion and what we've seen maybe in the past that would be helpful to share?
Yeah, this is really what we try to make available to our customers, is just making this easier. And a lot of what we're doing, like, we just did this last week. I had a customer reach out and say, "Hey, we're going through our first audit with you all. How do I download the support?" And I said, "Hey, why don't I do you one better? Why don't you just give your auditor direct access to Blue Onion, and they can go download the support?" And so there is traceability within our application to show how, like, what journal entries have been booked into your system, how to support those, how to back up any number that Blue Onion is responsible for. Like Evan said, we're not the full picture for you, but for the part that we're responsible for, how do you actually validate that and justify it for your auditors and give them transactional details? So when they come and sample X number of transactions, you just say, "Hey, here's your login to Blue Onion. You can go find it."
And Evan, maybe just speaking more broadly to different tools, like, how do you think about, different third-party tools, I guess, importance of, reconciliation, and how that sort of plays into that concept of it's just another month-end close, right? It just happens to be at the end of the year.
Right. So, I mean, reconciliations in general is the backbone of everything. I know it sounds simple, but it will test completeness. It'll test someone if they have a fat finger and they pressed an extra zero. You know, you always have to reconcile against something that's true. And we make the assumption that the bank activity and the bank statement that you get from the bank is true. Okay. So the example I always give, if you received a payment from a customer of $1,000 and you press zero one extra time and you think you have $10,000 or $9,000 more than you do, when you reconcile the bank, you're going to be like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I'm not giving Lindsay her bonus because I don't have that $9,000, right? So it's very important to have a good reconciliation month-end close process. Reconciliations is just part of that process. But without that, none of the information in your accounting software can be relied on to be accurate. Okay. Obviously, we're not talking about miscategorizing transactions, right? It's mainly focused on completeness and understanding what your open AR is, right? If you're Not again, it depends on the business, right? Whether wholesale, retail, or whatever business they're doing. But you really want to know when you end your year, what is your open AR? Who owes you money? How much is over 30, 60, 90? And if you're not applying payments in a systematic, consistent way and reconciling it, you can have egg on your face because you're going to say, hey, you owe me, $9,000 when they really paid you in full. So reconciliations are really, really important. And even though there are automated reconciliations and more things are coming in the market, I always stress you always have to look at it. Not only to make sure the reconciliation is done, but it forces you to actually look at your activity month over month in a more detailed way, right? If you're looking transaction by transaction, it makes you feel more part of the process and less removed. Because when a person gets less removed and he feels like, okay, I guess everything is working out the way it should, that breeds complacency. And then 2 or 3 months later, or when there's an audit, you're going to realize, oh my gosh, I missed this because I wasn't paying so much attention. So it's a huge opportunity doing those reconciliations to put your finger on the pulse. It sort of forces you to do that.
Probably, yeah, keep going. So for the checklist piece, so
Yeah.
Evan, yeah. Oh, go ahead. You go first, Gordy.
Okay, no, I was just gonna say, before we dive into the checklist, I'll give a preview to folks that are joining, and just as a reminder, we're gonna send you an email afterward with the more complete checklist. But it covers a lot of what the group's been sharing here. But Brian, I'd love to hear a bit more from your perspective. I know we have some customers on, but for folks who are not yet Blue Onion customers, like how do we help with that month-end reconciliation so that the year-end process is really more of a checking the box in a sense, but having them prepared for all the things they're going to need for year end because they've been using Blue Onion month over month. And for folks that don't work with us today, like how could we help get those processes set up relatively quickly to help them with the process?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start with kind of like what does the normal process with Blue Onion look like, but then also like what does an audit look like and how does Blue Onion kind of validate that? So what we're doing is as a platform is connecting to your order system, all of your payment processors and your bank and automatically stitching all of those together so that what Evan was talking about, these reconciliations that kind of validate around fat fingers or different potential issues that could happen, although in the system, maybe a fat finger isn't that possible. We're gonna check that, right? We're gonna review all of the orders that came in, confirm all of the payments that have justified those, and then make sure that those are all confirmed in the bank. And so we will then structure that into journal entries that can then be taken over to QuickBooks or NetSuite or whatever system so that you have an automated daily booking of all of that information into your system of record, your GL. And so then what that looks like at the end of the year is probably across all of these different systems, and we'll just take the bank, right? Is like so for your bank, they're going to take some activity within that bank and take a sample of deposits and say, hey, give me proof of what these were. They're also going to take some of your sales and say, give me some proof that these actually settled in your bank. And what you can do in Blue Onion is come in and even do an order search. You can search for every order. It gives you a profile page that says, here's everything that was in that order. Here's the payment that justifies that. Here's the bank deposit that where it settled. You can do the same thing in reverse and say, here's every deposit in the bank for the things that we cover, and give me all of the payments that justify this activity. And so it gives you all of that. Those also have hyperlinks out to the source data, so that'll take you out to the system of record to show that that is a valid transaction there.
Can I just comment on that? Uh, From my perspective, tools like that are game changers because in the past, or some of our clients, they don't, the data may not be as verifiable as they want it to be, and it may not be a real truth. But when you can run these queries and you can look at this stuff, and in the blink of an eye, you can sort of see how the detail behind it, it really separates and highlights the magnitude that Blue Onion can alleviate some of the pressures or concerns that people have. And it's a really fascinating way to do that. So I love that feature.
You guys, I was just having a little bit of a flashback when we were at Birchbox, and we are guilty of putting our auditors maybe in one of those windowless rooms for sure. but just like, and again, because this was over like printing out the, shipping confirmation with the tracking number, matching that to, a screenshot from the order system, trying to tie that to the deposit and the bank account, just everybody not being able to do anything for a week as we try and get, do the revenue testing. So yes, it definitely resonates, I think, here and with a lot of our customers too.
I love Brian's feedback around, sometimes auditors are off in a dark room working on these things, but just giving them access to Blue Onion. Like just here, take a look at whatever you need to see and you'll have the trail all the way from the order to the bank payout. So yeah, I really like how you put that. That makes it much simpler than printing out transactions and screenshots, Lindsay. That sounds like a lot of work. Cool. We're coming up on time, so I did want to quickly highlight the checklist that our team has put together, and I'll give a quick preview of it here. Let me just swap my screen. So in here, you'll see different FAQs that come up around tax season and the year-end process in general, particularly for e-commerce accounting teams. Some of these common mistakes to avoid, which I know we talked through some, but you'll see some more in here called out specifically. Kind of a bit of a timeline overview of just generally what's happening between January and February, and some of more of those checklist items that you should have prepared going into January. So hopefully this is really helpful for folks on the line to get started, especially if you don't have as much of a thorough process today, or if you're not working with Blue Onion specifically. Hopefully this gives you a great place to get started. So I did want to highlight that for folks too. And then jump back in here.
Do we want to take any, I know we're coming up on time too. Do we
Yeah.
want to take any just questions?
Yeah, that's a good call, Lindsay. Perfect. Let me take a look at the Q&A. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. From each of your perspectives, so both Evan and the Blue Onion team, across the clients you work with, what are those key challenges facing the accounting teams going into the year-end process? Whether that's like documentation they're chasing down, to your point, Lindsay, or broader challenges. And I know one could be particularly the time of year, right? Coming off Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and the holiday season. We know that comes with like a lot of work for the teams that we support, but curious from both of your perspectives what those key challenges are that you see.
I think the one thing we see, especially people that have high sales, like you just said, Black Friday, year end, there's a lot of data coming in, a lot of information, chargebacks, returns, like it can be chaotic. I think that's one of the bigger things that we see at the end of the year that's a real challenge for people.
Yeah, I'll echo that from maybe a slightly different perspective. Is that you see that even from the data, like the systems side, is like we see that with a lot of people's ERPs. Like we have an integration with NetSuite that books all of our sales over here, and Black Friday just blew through it. Like we couldn't actually get all of our sales over into the system. And so not only is it just a high volume time, everybody's stressed, but like your systems are not always working the exact same way that they were on a normal basis. So you have more stress added on top of the stress. Plus it's holidays, everybody's running around. So it is just a very chaotic time, especially in the e-commerce sector.
Yeah, for sure. Another question here from a Blue Onion customer perspective is like, which features should customers like be aware of as they're going into the year-end process that they might not be leveraging as much today that are particularly helpful with year-end, and also they mentioned the audit process.
Brian,
Yeah,
you're the Blue Onion expert.
So I think that what we can do there uh, to help with that is actually just make it again the same day, right? Like it's like one day is the next day is the next day is every day is the same day, and that is an adage I stole from a CFO I worked for a decade ago that just said month end should be just another day, and just trying to allow that to be the case. And that's what we try to do here at Blue Onion is allow all of that data to come through on daily bookings so that the month end that's already tied out, we already have all of that information, and that's just kind of forward as just another day.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Um, Anything around, yeah, this had, we kind of mentioned this, but I did want to circle back to it because I don't know if we called it out specifically. Any documentation that, I know Lindsay, you gave the example of what y'all used to do back in the day at Birchbox, but any specific documentation that you think is helpful for folks to start sourcing now so they have it ready? And for Blue Onion, I think the answer is probably it lives in Blue Onion, right? For the pieces that we support. So it's
Yeah,
being able to have that audit trail completely from the order to the
yeah.
bank payout directly within our system, which is great. You don't even need that documentation, but it's
I
there
mean,
for.
from a non-blue one and from a more,
Yeah.
general approach, going through the balance sheet items, understanding what your inventory levels are, beginning inventory, ending the regular formula, beginning and inventory, ending inventory, purchases, cost of goods sold, validating those numbers and making sure that whatever's rolling into that is going to be accurate, right? Someone input something incorrectly in terms of like what that cost is or what the purchase is. You also have to make sure using the weighted average method, LIFO, FIFO, be consistent, make sure you're having those discussions, make sure you understand the tax ramifications of how you're choosing to report your books is really important. The other thing is just take a look at the equity section, right? I don't know what people have going on. If there are any loans, principal, interest, making sure that that's broken out properly. Any accruals that you need to put in place, deferred revenue situations that you may need to look at. Just basic things. But again, I can't stress enough going through each line item with your internal accounting team or someone from our team or at the accounting firm or wherever you're working with and go through the balance sheet is really crucial.
Yeah. I had the same responses. A lot of the things we talked about with Blue Onion are the same thing on like we are just looking at balance sheets, right? Is we can validate your deferred revenue. We can validate those bank settlements. Those are all balance sheet accounts that you're inspecting and making sure that they're rolling, just like Evan's saying. And those things are also just the way that accounting works. It's beautiful, right? Is that's also going to flesh things out in revenue. Is if your deferred revenue doesn't roll, it's because probably there's also an issue with your revenue. Like there's an equal and opposite thing going on there. So those are really valuable things to do.
Great. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining. I know we're right at time here. Thank you, Evan, for joining us and sharing your expertise. It was so great to have you here. Brian, Lindsay, appreciate you all joining always. And just want to share out too, you can connect with Evan on LinkedIn and we'll share out his LinkedIn and the follow-up email. And of course, for folks that aren't familiar with Blue Onion and learn more about us today, you can check out our website and happy to connect over a demo and share more of what Brian talked through today. But hopefully, again, this was really helpful for folks and good luck with year end and hoping everyone can spend some time off around the holidays with their families. But yeah, best of luck heading into audit season, everybody.
Thank you so much for the
Thanks.
opportunity. It
Yeah.
was great.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Be well.